Hello, I'm Kim Sauer at Electronica in Munich 2018, and I'm with Carl from Peak and I'm with Harold from Co-Young. Now, we're at an extremely busy, popular show here in Munich, and there's a lot of messaging and discussions going on, and one of the key things that we talk about over and over again at the shows involved with Industry 4.0, etc., is the huge amounts of data that is now, or has been, generated through the machines, through all of the intelligence that's being created on the factory floor. What I'd like to have a discussion on and get a feel for from you is where we're at with this amount of data at the moment and how we're coping with it, and then have a little peek, if I can take that as a little a pun, into the future as to where you think this is going. So where are we at the moment?
So,
don't need to do that.
Okay. So now there's a situation where there's obviously lots of data being collected, and I think the analysis of that now is to give it the smart section to move forward next. That you're seeing this, the easy trends that you can spot within the data, and it's how you apply, say, artificial intelligence, for instance, then to actually take that data and spot trends that the human's not seeing. So you can set the software to look for certain things and look for certain traits, but maybe that's not the trait you actually need to focus on to improve your process. So you can be putting your efforts and your money into correcting part of the process that actually is not the biggest driver then. So it's really getting the best use for your money then to give the biggest improvement.
But Harold, I guess that's the issue that we're facing. How do you select the right data that's going to help you with the right outcome that you need?
I think it's important that we learned over the last years that the valuable data is important. You have to trust the data. So first, the technology entering the 3D world in real data and measurement data enables us to go for the next level, to collect the data, trust this data, and analyze the data. So it's very important. There's a clear changeover from focusing on catching a defect into analyzing, into reading the data, and let me say, to predict things. But the amount of data has been not doubled, not tripled. It's a factor we cannot believe, and I think this is we have to understand that the available data is huge, and now we have to learn how to execute them, and this is new for all of us.
And there are a lot of, well, actually everybody within this industry is thinking about the solutions. There'll be outsourced solutions for this, but it's probably something that everybody internally also needs to deal with. So are we having to change as businesses in terms of the type of solutions, technical solutions we have, but also maybe human resource solutions that we put in place, or the type of training people need to have to deal with this mega data?
I think it's a shift in the way you actually process the data as well. So I think historically it's been you collect the data, then you process it afterwards. And then there's a shift, then that will shift more to more real-time data analysis, and the processing power is then there to actually do that in real time. So rather than you correcting the process as a factor of what happened in the history, now you're going to start to try and correct that actually as the process is going on. And then further into the future, as you get more and more, as you say, the artificial intelligence coming in and maybe more processing power, you actually start trying to get more predictive then. You're actually going to say, well, I can see this is starting, I'm going to see this problem. So you start to have sensors on motors within your process and things. So you start seeing the motor starts to fail, you start to see vibration. So there's things almost outside your process that are going to affect it. But because you weren't collecting that data before, now there's more and more sensors on more and more machines, on more and more capability. And things that you saw coming through from, say, the oil and gas industry, where they want to know, right, we want it to work till this point and then know it's going to fail, so we can actually correct that before we even get a problem. And I think that you'll see, as you say, the huge amount of data we're getting is because there's more sensors, so there's more information. It's the clever bit is going to be processing that and making use of that as early as possible, but even predicting what is going to happen, where the trends are going to end up then.
I think from our Dr. Ko, the owner of the company, already 3 or 4 years ahead, he predicted that we as a machine manufacturer have to change in a solution provider. And does not mean to put some extra machine in front or behind. It's the getting the data and supporting the people in front of the machines, from the operator to the process manager, with the right conclusions. So the visualization of the data becomes a very important thing. Easy visualization up to intuitive scenarios that people can easily adapt. The qualification of the engineers is high. but the experience we could gain over the years and develop ourselves in understanding of processes is getting shorter. You have to start the job and you should know how it works. And this time is gone. Time to market is a good example. We had the long 3-4 years, now it's 6 months, maybe only 3 months. All this experience we have to provide to the clever engineers and to guide them to make the right decisions. And due to the amount of data, it's no longer just a job on a work desk. It's really driven by AI and digital twins and all this kind of aspect to see the abnormals, the obstacles, and to react on time. This preventive and predictable actions, I think is the goal. We are moving in that way. Learning from the history and predicting the future, let me say that's the key words we have to bring to the people. And due to the burden and the workload everybody has, because we get more jobs in a shorter time to do, this has to be guided professional. The wrong decision today could be your last one.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. And so therefore all these solutions aren't there to replace the workforce like a lot of people think is happening with a lights out factory. It's actually to assist and help make the right decisions based on history as well as predictive analysis.
It's almost, as you said, there's so much information that the operator almost feels overwhelmed. He just can't actually process that. So it's kind of almost filtering that to a point where you're saying, well, look, this is the analysis, this is what's the most important, focus on that. So it's making that person more effective then. Because I see lots of customers where they've got all the data, they just haven't got time to look at it or do anything with it.
I think this
and some of the answers to their problems is actually in the data. They have it, they know what's, and if they'd looked at the data or had the time to, or the processes to do that. And as you say, the problem is the workload on everybody is so dramatic that they haven't got time to do that. So it's having the clever software that actually takes that and then actually gives them an answer for them to focus on then. As you say, it's not replacing people, it's making best use of the resources you have.
And I think we humans are driven by the most obvious. We are catching this easily up, but this might be not our biggest problem. It's only the obvious problem. There are much deeper layers where you can really see that this is happening. You can trace and track it, but it's not visible. And I think this is exactly the point that we have to grab up this and take the right action and guiding the people. And this sensor becomes 100 times more sensitive when you compare it with the obvious. You cannot miss it. But what we are talking today, it's some things which even you cannot really sense. It doesn't help to get new glasses. It doesn't help. It's much more than just a magnification of a happening. This is very important to see. That's where we have to go and to underline all our learnings combined with software, hardware, and at least bringing the experience of the people into these packages. It's not the computer who brings the solution, it's the combination of humans to utilize the support through computers to the power of data.
When we're talking about this subject, one of the things that always comes up and that we can't ignore is that the world is changing and that we as companies, and obviously communicating with our own factory structure, but we're also now cooperating with the external environment as well, where data is influencing what we do and our data is influencing what they do as well as what the customer wants ultimately. So one of the key issues there, I mean there's lots of issues, security, etc., but we're not talking just data generated out of our own machines. Within everything that we've discussed and that framework, this is obviously an additional layer of complexity when we're talking vendor-to-vendor communication and data generation. How are we dealing with that?
I think what you're seeing there is a convergence of actually some of the vendors actually looking at how that data is presented, and then having the control systems above that then that take that data and are seeing to talk, one end of the line talking to the beginning of the line. Doing that across vendors is more difficult, but you're starting to see, where before there used to be individual machines just worrying about their own process, for across a single vendor, you're seeing that now talk across the whole line. So I assume, as we move forward, you'll get different vendors then having to sort out, okay, how are we going to talk? If he's got this machine here and this machine here, that then needs to be able to communicate together. So you always get the first stage, which is, if you have all the same vendor, it all works very nicely. And then you'll start to see some open standards start to come out, and then you'll get different machines talking to different machines then. But that's where it's almost the abstract layer of bringing that individual machine, put that data out in a set format, and then having a layer above that then which handles that. And that again is, the speed of change is that needs to occur, because without that, that company's not going to survive, because it needs to know, right, there's a problem, where is it? Okay, it's actually, I'm picking up the problem here, but the actual problem's caused back here in the line. And that's where then, okay, now we know what the problem is, now we can go fix this.
I think it's very clear the willingness between the partners in a line or in a factory environment has changed to communicate. Before, everybody was afraid that something was proven in root cause wrongly, and maybe even up to blackmail. With the technology today and exchanging, because it's not the defect you communicate, you talk about variation, you talk about the deviations. The willingness is much more, and of course you're driven due to marketing, messaging, Industry 4.0, digital twin. This is not the future for a one-man show. It's the solution will be provided by harmonized vendor interfaces. We see a lot of new interfaces coming because the old style doesn't work anymore. There are more complex communication between the machines, but the machine communication to provide the workflow is one thing. To utilize the different aspects from the contribution of every machine, might be a simple handling module or a pick and place or oven. Every machine contributes to the process, and with this optimized, with the proper tools, I think it's clear that it's a win-win for everybody. I think that has changed. You're not longer isolated. You see it as a complete line. At the end, should be a perfect product, high quality, and this secures the profit. And this is only possible if everybody contributes, because otherwise you have to do it as one vendor. This is very costly, and customers in our flexible world, they would like to have the best of each class, not just one vendor who is good in one thing. It's really the best in class and then combined in a line, and this guarantees the best output.
And I think as part of that monitoring, you're not just talking about the defects of the actual product or anything you're putting along, or the variation. It's actually the machines monitoring themselves. So there's very simple things like drive motors and things now. It used to be a drive motor was just a motor, that was it, and it worked until it failed. Whereas now there's lots of sensors that are built into the drive motors. It knows kind of how it's performing, is it vibrating? So that information, each individual product actually almost is monitoring itself and saying, right, I'm good, I'm healthy, and then it's that predictive thing from that then there which says, well, the reason you got a variation in your process is your process hasn't changed. It's the machine is degraded to a certain extent, and that's causing the deviation. So that you're getting down to the root cause. Then it's not your process. This machine's changed. What's changed, and then how can we predict that earlier?
So to get the discussion to an end, because it is a very complex theme that we could be discussing probably all afternoon, because there's lots of routes we can take. Would you agree that therefore in the past we would all work on our machines to make them faster, quicker, more precise, etc., and there was a lot of focus on the actual technology within the machine? Would it be true therefore, within the context that we're talking about, to say that we're now more focusing on true data analysis and useful data analysis and putting more priority onto that, because actually our machines are very capable but just need to be fine-tuned with
on
the
that
data?
level. Keep on that level, I think is right. Everything what we do is to keep the level high and to smaller the bandwidth. I think you have to time, especially when you're in the EMS business, where you have daily business, changing components, PCBs, everything. And if you can shorten this, that's the goal, and I think this is precisely what we like to go, utilizing and make the best out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.
Interesting talking to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.